A man wakes up in a hotel room. Cash is scattered all over the floor. Next to him lies his lover, covered in blood, no longer breathing. And what makes it even stranger is this. The door is locked from the inside. The security chain is still on. The window handle has been removed, and there are no signs of forced entry outside. The entire room looks like a locked chamber that no one could have entered or escaped from. But when the police break in, they find only one person alive. Him, Doria. A successful tech CEO, a man with a perfect career, a perfect family, and a perfect life. Now he has become the only suspect in the murder of his lover. He insists he was framed. But here's the problem. If the killer really existed, how did he vanish from a room locked from the inside? And if the killer only wanted money, why was all the cash left untouched on the floor? On the surface, this looks like a locked room murder. But the real truth begins 3 months earlier with a car accident. A few hours before the murder, Doria brings in the strongest lawyer in the business, Goodman. For decades, this woman has almost never lost a case. She arrives at Doria's home early, and the first thing she says makes his face change. The prosecution has found a new eyewitness. In 3 hours, that witness will testify in court, which means if Doria still wants to turn this around, he has only 3 hours to tell her every detail he's been hiding. Goodman doesn't comfort him. She doesn't buy his performance either. She simply pulls out a newspaper. On it is a report about a missing young man. The moment Doria sees the photo, he finally goes silent, because that young man is where this entire nightmare really began. 3 months earlier, Doria and his lover Laura met in secret outside the city. Both of them had families, and both had public lives they couldn't afford to expose. To the outside world, Doria claimed he was on a business trip to Paris, but in reality, he and Laura were hiding together in a secluded cabin in the mountains. On the drive back that day, the two of them were still arguing in the car. Doria wanted to end the affair. Laura refused to accept it, and in the split second, when both of them were distracted, a deer suddenly rushed out from the side of the road. Doria swerved hard. The car lost control and slammed straight into an oncoming vehicle. They both survive without a scratch, but the young driver in the other car isn't moving. Doria gets out to check on him. His first instinct is to call the police, but Laura stops him immediately, because the moment the police get involved, their affair will be exposed. Doria's company, his family, and everything he has just built could collapse overnight. And this is a remote mountain road. No cameras, no witnesses. If they simply leave, maybe the crash will be treated as an ordinary accident. Doria hesitates, and that one moment of hesitation puts him on a road he can never come back from. Just as they're about to leave, they realize their own car won't start after the crash. And then things get even worse. Another car appears in the distance, coming toward them. If anyone sees the scene, there will be no way out. Laura reacts fast. She lowers the young man's body, then takes a pen and paper from his car. She makes it look like she is the one driving it. When the passing driver stops and asks what happened, Laura stays perfectly calm. She pretends the two cars only scraped each other while swerving to avoid a deer, and now, they're just handling it privately. But right then, the phone inside the young man's car suddenly starts ringing. In that moment, the air feels frozen. Laura has no choice but to walk over. She answers the phone, hangs it up, and pretends it was just the insurance company calling. At the same time, she notices blood starting to seep out from under the car door. If the passing driver gets even a little closer, the truth will be exposed on the spot. So Laura uses her body to block the blood from view. Luckily, the man doesn't notice anything strange, and soon, he drives away. But just to be safe, Laura quietly slips the young man's phone into her own pocket. That one small move will almost destroy everything later. The crash already has a witness, so the body and the car can't stay at the scene. The two of them stuff the young man into the trunk. Then they decide to split up. Doria will deal with the body and the car. Laura stays behind to wait for the tow truck to fix their own vehicle. After night falls, Doria drives the young man's car to a remote lake. The body is still inside. There is no one around, only darkness and the sound of water. He slowly pushes the car into the lake, and as he watches it sink beneath the surface, he thinks he has finally buried the evidence. But he has no idea the real crime is only just beginning to rise. Meanwhile, Laura runs into the last person she ever wanted to meet. A kind man drives by and sees that her car has broken down. He offers to tow it back to his house and fix it there. Out in the middle of nowhere, Laura has no real choice, so she follows him to a warm little house nearby. The man's wife welcomes her in and offers her coffee. But then Laura looks around the living room. On the wall, there's a family photo, a father, a mother, and their son. Laura only glances at it once, and her face instantly changes, because the young man in the photo is the same driver they just hit. His name is Daniel, and the warm couple standing in front of Laura are Daniel's parents. Laura has to force herself to stay calm. She washes the blood off her hands and tries to act like an ordinary stranger who just needed help. But soon, Daniel's mother realizes her son still hasn't come home, so she calls his phone, and the ringtone starts playing from Laura's pocket. Laura can only wait until they aren't looking. Then she quickly slips the phone into the gap between the sofa cushions. When the phone rings a second time, Daniel's father finds it inside the couch. The couple assumes their son simply forgot it before leaving. For now, they don't suspect anything. Laura finally drives away. But before she leaves, she instinctively adjusts the driver's seat. Daniel's father notices it. It's a tiny detail. But later, it becomes the first thing that makes him question the truth. After Doria and Laura meet up again, they decide to erase every trace. They send Doria's car to a scrapyard to have it destroyed. Then they fake records showing he was on a business trip to Paris. After that, Doria goes to the police and reports his car stolen from a parking lot. That way, even if the police trace the license plate, they still can't prove he was at the crash scene that night. After all of that, Doria and Laura agree to never contact each other again. They think their secret will sink to the bottom of the lake forever. But Daniel's parents refuse to give up. Before long, the police use Daniel's father's statement to trace the car back to Doria. Because the car Laura brought in for repairs was Doria's car. The police also discover that there really were signs of two cars colliding at the scene. But Doria is already prepared. The fake Paris business trip, the stolen car report, his legal team working behind the scenes. All of it fits together just well enough to keep the police from charging him. For now, Doria gets away. But this is far from over. Not long after, the news suddenly reports that the missing Daniel is suspected of embezzling money from the bank. They say he may have fled to escape punishment. Doria immediately realizes Laura must be behind it. It turns out, Laura had taken Daniel's wallet from his body, and her husband happens to work at the bank. Using her husband's access, she creates fake records, making it look like Daniel had stolen bank funds. Just like that, the police investigation is completely pushed in the wrong direction. An innocent missing young man is turned, through their lies, into a criminal who ran off with stolen money. Doria thinks Laura has gone too far, but he has no right to judge her, because by now, they're already in the same boat. During this time, Doria's career keeps rising. His company successfully expands overseas. He wins awards, appears on the news, and stands on stage accepting applause from everyone. But just when he thinks the whole thing is finally behind him, Daniel's father appears. The grieving father sneaks into the event and stops Doria right in front of everyone. He has no proof, but he knows his son would never embezzle money. And he knows the woman who came to his house that night was lying, because Daniel's phone couldn't have ended up in the sofa for no reason. And because before that woman left, she adjusted the driver's seat, which means she wasn't the one driving the car. There had to be someone else with her, an accomplice. And that accomplice may very well be Doria. The father only wants to know one thing: where is his son? But Doria can't tell him, because the moment he reveals where he sank the car, he's admitting that he helped dispose of the body. In the end, Daniel's father is dragged away by security. Doria thinks it was nothing more than a powerless accusation from a desperate father. But not long after, he receives an anonymous package. Inside is a photo taken by the lake, and an audio recording. The sender claims to know the truth about the crash, and demands 100,000 euros in hush money. Doria is convinced the blackmailer is the driver who passed by that day. He thinks the man must have noticed the blood after all. Maybe he only pretended to leave, then secretly followed him to the lake, and took a photo of the car being sunk. So Doria and Laura follow the instructions, and bring the money to the hotel they were told to go to. The same room where Laura will later be found dead. They wait inside for a long time, but the blackmailer never shows up. Just as Doria starts to feel that something is wrong, his phone suddenly receives a text, and the message comes from Laura's phone. But Laura is standing right in front of him. She never sent anything. Even stranger, the text makes it look as if Laura was the one who asked him to come to this hotel. If something happens to Laura here, that message will tie Doria directly to the crime scene. In that moment, he realizes he has walked straight into a trap. Before he can react, someone suddenly attacks him from behind. When he wakes up again, and that brings us back to the scene from the opening. In the eyes of the police, the only person inside that room who could have killed Laura is Doria. This is the version he first tells Goodman. A mysterious person set the trap, killed Laura, then framed him for everything. But after Goodman hears the story, she doesn't believe it right away. She quickly points out the biggest problem. If the killer wanted money, why was the cash left behind? If the killer was that driver, why would he take such a huge risk just to commit murder? And most importantly, how did he disappear from a room locked from the inside? This version of the story would never hold up in court, so Goodman offers another version. Maybe the person who killed Laura wasn't the passing driver at all. Maybe it was Daniel's father. He had a motive. He knew his son didn't run away with stolen money, and he knew Laura had someone helping her. If the justice system couldn't give him answers, then maybe he decided to take revenge himself. And the secret of that hotel room may be hidden inside the hotel staff. Goodman pulls out a news photo from the day Doria was arrested. In the background of the photo, there is a woman who seems completely unimportant, but she is Daniel's mother, and she works at that hotel. Goodman lays out a complete theory. Daniel's father hid inside the room ahead of time. His mother used her position as a hotel employee to open the window in the storage room next door. Then, after Doria and Laura entered the room, the father attacked Doria, killed Laura, and placed Doria's fingerprints on the murder weapon. After that, he used a tool he had prepared in advance to open the window. Then he climbed along the outside wall to the storage room next door. And while the police were caught in the chaos, Daniel's mother quietly locked the window again. Just like that, the hotel room became a perfect locked room crime scene. The theory makes perfect sense. So much sense that even Doria starts to believe it. But Goodman's real skill isn't in giving him an excuse. It's in guiding him, step by step, straight into her trap. Soon, Goodman gives him another piece of bad news. The new witness has been identified. It's the driver who passed by on the night of the crash. That sends Doria into a panic. If that driver testifies in court, the crash and the disposal of Daniel's body will all be dragged back into the light. Goodman seizes the moment and lays out a new defense strategy to help Doria avoid the murder charge. Since Doria already has the Paris business trip as his alibi, they can push everything onto Laura. Laura caused the crash. Laura disposed of the body. Laura framed Daniel as a thief who ran off with the money, and Doria was just the victim dragged into this mess by his lover. But for this version to work, they still need one key piece of evidence. They need to place one of Laura's personal belongings inside the car at the bottom of the lake. That way, once the police find the vehicle, they will connect Laura directly to Daniel's death. And Doria only has to admit that he hid the fact Laura came to him for help. Then he can walk away from the murder charge. The strategy sounds perfect, and it hits exactly what Doria wants most. Protect his reputation, protect his company, protect his freedom. But for this strategy to work, Goodman needs to know the exact place where the car was sunk. Doria finally picks up the pen and marks the lake on the map. And with that one stroke, he gives away his real secret. Hearing this, Goodman loses control for the first time. She calls Doria a murderer. Doria instantly explodes, but Goodman quickly pulls herself back together. She says it was only a test. If he gets this angry in court, the prosecution will tear open that emotional weakness. Doria believes her again, because this woman is too professional, too calm, too good at knowing how to win. But Goodman isn't done yet. Then she starts tearing apart every version he has given her so far. And she tells him the version that comes closest to the truth. Maybe after the crash, the person who wanted to call the police wasn't Doria, it was Laura. And the one who stopped her was Doria himself. Maybe Daniel's wallet wasn't secretly taken by Laura. Maybe Doria took it. And maybe the fake embezzlement story wasn't created by Laura either. Maybe Doria used his own lawyers, his own connections, and his own resources to make it happen. Because compared to Laura, he had far more power to pull something like that off. More importantly, Laura later developed severe anxiety. She simply couldn't live with the guilt anymore. She wanted to end all of it, so she contacted Daniel's parents. She told them the truth. Then, using the blackmail story as an excuse, she lured Doria to the hotel. At the same time, she set up a scheduled text message in advance. At the agreed time, that message would automatically be sent to Doria's phone, and the content made it look as if Laura herself had asked him to come to the hotel. She didn't do this to frame Doria. She did it to protect herself, because she knew Doria might not agree to turn himself in. He might even try to silence her. So if she really died inside that hotel room, that text message would become the first clue pointing straight at Doria. And the 100,000 euros was never hush money. It was compensation she wanted to give to Daniel's parents. She hoped Doria would go with her and confess everything. But Doria would never let that happen. Inside the hotel room, once Laura reveals her plan, Doria finally decides to kill her. He grabs a decorative object from the room and smashes it into Laura. Then he scatters the money all over the floor. He stages the scene to make it look like he was attacked too. Then he deliberately breaks the mirror so he can make himself look like a victim. The so-called locked room murder was a setup from the very beginning. From start to finish, it was a deception staged by Doria himself. Goodman keeps pressing him, step by step. She needs Doria to say it himself. And finally, Doria says the one thing Goodman has been pushing him to admit. I killed her. In that moment, his last mental defense completely collapses. Goodman says she needs to step outside and get some air. Then she'll organize their strategy for the trial. She leaves the room, but Doria still doesn't know the real trial is already over. A few minutes later, his personal lawyer calls. The lawyer tells him the real Goodman is on her way. Doria freezes. If the real Goodman hasn't arrived yet, then who was the woman sitting across from him just now? Right after that, his phone signal starts to glitch. Then the pen in his chest pocket suddenly leaks ink. Doria takes it apart, and hidden inside is a tiny listening device. He rushes to the window and looks across at the apartment opposite him. The Goodman who just left his room is standing beside Daniel's father. Then she removes her wig, takes out the colored contact lenses, and peels away the disguise from her face. The face underneath belongs to Daniel's mother. It turns out, from the very beginning, the so-called lawyer Goodman was a fake. The real lawyer was still on her way, and Daniel's mother used that 3-hour window to disguise herself as Goodman. Step by step, she pressured Doria into telling the truth. Those so-called informant calls were all made by Daniel's father. Those so-called updates about the witness were also part of their plan, just psychological pressure designed to break him. What she really wanted was never to help Doria win the case. She wanted to find out where he had dumped her son's body, and she wanted Doria to admit it himself, that he killed Daniel, and that he killed Laura too. Then the doorbell rings. The real Goodman has finally arrived. And across the street, inside the opposite apartment, Daniel's father has already called the police. He says,
Quiero contarles la verdad de lo que le pasó a mi hijo.
And that is where the movie ends. Doria finally loses the game he thought was perfect. He had money, he had lawyers, he had social status, he had the power to fake evidence. But there was one thing he never saw coming: that he would be defeated by two ordinary parents using the simplest and most devastating method possible. Not violence, not revenge killing, just making him talk, making him say the truth that had been buried at the bottom of the lake. The real brilliance of The Invisible Guest was never just the number of twists, it's that every twist peels away another layer of Doria's lies. At first, he is the victim in a locked-room murder case. Then, he becomes the accomplice who helped cover up a car crash and dispose of a body. After that, he becomes the killer who sent a living man to the bottom of a lake. And by the end, we finally see the truth. He is also the man who really killed Laura. He thought he was telling a story, but the whole time, he was being interrogated. He thought he was testing his lawyer, but from the very first second, the hunter was already sitting right across from him. And the invisible guest was never just the killer who vanished from the hotel room. It was also the invisible demon inside Doria himself: greed, selfishness, and the belief that he could get away with anything. And the most terrifying excuse of all: if no one knows, then it never happened. But the truth doesn't stay buried at the bottom of a lake forever. Sooner or later, just like that car, it will slowly rise out of the darkness, and every lie will eventually find its moment to drag the liar into the abyss.